All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here, as always, with my amigo Drew Dinsick. We're going to talk about three games today in the NFL upcoming slate. I'm excited about all three of these, Drew. They're all interesting. They're all weird games in their own right. Bucs-Falcons, Jags-Browns, which has become compelling after what happened in Monday Night Football. And then kind of my favorite one of all, and a line I really don't understand, and that's Colts-Bengals. But let's start off with the showdown that no one knows about in the NFC South. Bucs at Falcons. Falcons are 6-6, which is good enough for sole ownership of first place in the NFC South. The Bucs are 5-7, coming off a win at home to the Panthers that they probably didn't deserve to have, or at least that was a coin flip. Total in this one is 39 in the Dome. Do you have any play on this game?
Yeah, I'm following this market pretty carefully because the injuries to the Buccaneers defense are going to matter one way or the other here. I guess just to completely set the table here, this is a play-in game for the Falcons. Falcons win this game, they're going to be pretty difficult to beat in the weak NFC South. If the Buccaneers lose this game, that is basically put a bow on their season, and they start looking at quarterback prospects, I guess, because they're going to have a chance at QB 4 or 5 in this draft. So this is an interesting kind of high leverage game for these two teams. I wouldn't say that the Buccaneers have that easy of a path to flip the Falcons overall if they win this game, but it sure would go a long way to help. And in general, there's been a little bit of kind of souring, I would say, on exactly what to do with this Atlanta offense, even up against, even at home and up against a defense that is missing some key pieces that, is really a tough read last week. Like, I rewatched Carolina, Tampa Bay. I have a problem, I guess. I don't know why I did that to myself, but I did just to try to kind of, because I needed to get a sense of, was this a good game for the Bucs or a bad game? Because they didn't cover, they got bet against, but ultimately, like, they scored when they needed to. They got the high leverage first downs when they needed to end the game. The offense is like, it's capable. They have some absolute, stud wide receivers still. I'm not sure why Chris Godwin has kind of gotten a little phased out this year, but Mike Evans is still an absolute monster. Rashad White has come along and really given them a punch on the ground. And traditionally, their defense, as schemed, is outstanding against the run. So this is a bad matchup for the Falcons. And I think the market is kind of taking note accordingly. It's come off of the 3, which means at this point, if you're getting involved, you're probably waiting for continued, positive news, for the Bucs defense to take maybe a money line position. I guess it really wasn't 3 at very many places, so maybe nobody really got to 3. But total sitting at 39. Quite low, considering that neither of these defenses are that trustworthy. But certainly, the Baker Mayfield and Desmond Ridder are both guys that, fondness for turning over the ball at times, certainly this year. The Desmond Ridder looks like he is just dying to find a way to fumble it in a key moment. And Baker Mayfield with Jesse Bates in the backfield could, give you points the other way. So slightly into the over for me here at 39, and would only look for Bucs or pass in the side market here, but going to need some confirmation that they're going to have some of their linebacker and core back, because it's going to be a long day for them trying to stop the rushing attack of the Falcons if you don't have Levante David or Devin White available, on top of Jamel Dean, who would be nice to have to take away Drake London. So probably one that I will pass on, but can you make a compelling case for the Buccaneers to either win this game or steal the NFC South?
I think so. I think this is a good matchup for the Bucs in a few ways, so long as they have their guys back. And I think a lot of the analysis of this matchup just revolves around health, to your point about the Bucs guys with Devin White, Levante David, Jamel Dean all missing last week. And then the Falcons. And Drew, I'm in the unenviable position of really needing the Falcons to win the NFC South, which I don't even know how it really happened, but it is happening. No. It's a reality that I'm living. And so I watched all of Falcons Jets, which, similar to your rewatching of Bucs Panthers. It's like deciding to go and just watch Manchester by the Sea for a 4th time. If anyone's seen that movie, which is about as grim as I could possibly get, but that was the experience at MetLife Stadium, where So a few things. So AJ Terrell gets knocked out like 3 plays into the game.
Yeah.
And he's their second best player on defense after Jesse Bates, I think. And they don't really have that much left at corner. It's like Jeffrey Okudah, who hasn't had a renaissance out of Detroit. The replacement for Terrell was Clark Phillips III. I'm not overly familiar with Clark Phillips III's work, but he was fine. But it was against the Jets and Tim Boyle. And he's 5'9", so he's not going to cover Mike Evans. So I'm not sure what they're going to do if they don't have AJ Terrell. Nate Landman, their best linebacker, he left the game. Caleb McGarry on the offensive line, he left the game too. So if those 3 guys are right, I'd like the Falcons in the matchup. But, I mean, the Bucs, to your point about them kind of being solid enough on offense, Baker's been good. Like, he's been an average NFL quarterback this season, which is perfectly fine. They've got a couple of good tackles. Evans is having an amazing season. Godwin is still vaguely useful. Like, I think just the combination of Mayfield, Evans, a vaguely competent O-line, a vaguely useful Chris Godwin gives you something of a floor on offense, particularly in a dome against the suspect pass defense in Atlanta. And the Bucs, their big flaw, and the Bucs they've always, it feels like forever they've had a good run defense, and that has still been very good this year. They got the 4th best run defense, dependent on the linebackers being available to some point there. But their big weakness is they cannot defend the pass. CJ Stroud threw for 700 yards against them. They get lit up through the air every single game, just about. Brock Purdy had his perfect passer rating against the Bucs. But going up against Desmond Ridder, I think that weakness is neutralized a bit. And now, having watched all of Desmond Ridder's snaps against the Jets, and look, his PFF grade was terrible, his EPA per play, everything was terrible. I didn't think he was that bad in that game. I thought that, like, he can make some throws, he moves around a bit. He wasn't hopeless the way that Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian were hopeless. So I'm a little bit more of a Ridder believer now that I'm riding with Desi, much to my chagrin. But I do think if both these teams are at full health, I still lean Bucs. I think these are pretty much the same team. So I would rather be on Bucs plus 2.5.
Yeah, pretty much the same team is a good way to put it. Market expecting team total for the Buccaneers in the 18.5 range. So basically they probably need 20 points to get the win. You could take a team total over as a potential hedge and just hope that the Falcons find a way to get it done 21-20 or something along those lines, which is not crazy. But you're correct in pointing out that there is a pretty decent floor for the Bucs offense. Worth pointing out, the Buccaneers defense is a step down from facing the Jets.
Yes,
almost certainly. And the Falcons defense is a step down from facing the Panthers as currently constituted, in my opinion. And so I think both of these offenses may be having a little bit more breathing room, a little bit more success. And of course, the dome environment, as you mentioned, I think all huge factors. I'm kind of talking myself into an over. I'm going to relook at my numbers here, but I originally made it 40. I saw a point of an edge. Anyone betting overs this year is basically ready to call it a season because it's been such a miserable experience. But this is what I'm going to have to take another look at.
Yep, that's fair. Just looking at the Panthers' performance against the Bucs, I mean, they had vaguely positive, almost positive EPA on the ground against the Bucs, like certainly relative to Tampa Bay's usual performance against the run, the Panthers exceeded that. So I think certainly if they don't have, Dean and White and Levante David, then they might be in a bit of trouble against Bijan and Tyler Algier and company. Cordarrelle Patterson's got to stop getting snaps. Like it's
what are we doing? Why?
Again, it's such a miserable existence that spending time away from my family, hoping that Cordarrelle Patterson stops getting the ball in the rain at MetLife Stadium. But he just seems like he had nothing left. And Bijan has plenty left, and even Tyler Algier he's perfectly solid. And in a game like that, where you just want 4 yards each play, that would be fine going up against Tim Boyle.
Either stop giving Cordarrelle Patterson the ball or give him some cleats and take away the cement shoes that he's wearing right now, because it takes him an eternity to get back to the line of scrimmage. It is wild watching it.
Yeah, he might be done. He's got it looking now. He's got a 58 PFF grade. Tyler Algiers 76, Bijan 68. Just thought there's no need for Cordell Patterson. You've already got two perfectly good running backs. Don't need to play all the hits with Cordell. All right, before we move on to another weird game, Jags-Browns. This holiday season, Drew, it's coming. Get the fantasy fan in your life, the exclusive RotoWorld Draft Guide bundle, featuring expert analytics, player insights, and season-long tools. Get all three of the draft guides for one low price. Go to NBCsports.com/holiday bundle and use code HOLIDAY23 at checkout to receive 25% off and a $10 Fanatics gift card. All right, Jags-Browns. This is the chaos game. Yesterday, we're recording on Tuesday late afternoon. Before Monday Night Football, this line was Jags -3. Is now Browns -3 and still getting backed there. The favorite, the total is 31.5, down from 40. The news, of course, that Trevor Lawrence has a high ankle sprain, but everything is stable and he hasn't been ruled out for this week. Certainly the market thinks that he is not going to go. Added to all this, I think we've got some weather in Cleveland too. So it's all a bit of a mess. How do you sift through it all?
So let's start with the key thing, which is the downgrade to the Jags offense, going from Trevor Lawrence to not just CJ Beathard, but an injured CJ Beathard. He accrued a wrist injury in that game. And the CJ Beathard experience in, just being inserted into live action was not as bad as you would have thought. He had actually a very nice deep ball to Calvin Ridley out of structure that got called back with a very obvious hold. But there's a problem here, Jay. And if everyone else on the Jaguars was healthy and you take out Trevor Lawrence and plug in CJ Beathard, 6 points, no problem. The problem is Cam Robinson is hurt. His replacement, Walker Little, went down in the game. And your wide receiver, too, and Christian Kirk, who would be kind of the guy that would be the most effective against this Browns defense, he's going to miss time, too, with what I'm assuming is, some sort of sports hernia surgery. So not a great spot for the Jaguars any way you want to slice it. The fact that they have a short week on top of it to get Beathard ready because they played on Monday, not great. The fact that the Browns defense is home and you now have another week of actually getting those defensive players the rest and rehabilitation they need to be ready to play on Sunday, also not good for the Jaguars. And then the weather, which is again like, what exactly?
26-mile-per-hour winds.
Yes,
in Cleveland, and a lot of rain. So
I'll tell you what, Jay. There is an impact of 20+ mile-an-hour winds in an NFL game neutrally, right? It's even worse in Cleveland. Something about the way that stadium is situated relative to the lake and the directions of the winds. It is a nightmare for any kind of ball out of a hand, off of a foot. Like, it just is absolute chaos when there is winds of that magnitude in Cleveland. And so absolutely agree with the direction and the velocity of the under here with the weather combined with the replacement quarterback. And I'm assuming Joe Flacco is going to get the start for the Browns. Haven't heard confirmation one way or the other. Yeah. Have you heard confirmation that it's Flacco?
No, but DTR is still in concussion protocol. Yeah. And I just think that Flacco played at a level against the Rams that DTR and PJ Walker just haven't flashed this year, right? Like Flacco
played at a level that would have been in top 32 of all quarterbacks we've seen take snaps this year, I think.
Yes, and
which
DTR
is unbelievable.
PJ Walker haven't gotten there.
No, they haven't. So kind of, I'm assuming it's going to be Flacco, although his kind of precision downfield passing is going to be negated a bit by the wind, although his ability to, kind of be a field general and, check into the right plays. And actually what he was doing in the intermediate part of the field over the middle was the most effective against the Rams. And you can absolutely hurt the Jags there. I mean, that was everything that Jake Browning did yesterday was hurt the Jags there. I am a little perturbed because I have been dying to sell high on this Jaguars defense for weeks and weeks and weeks now. They are not as good as their numbers. It is a lot of opponent, driven success that they've had this year on defense. And I got a second half over in the Browns game, on the Bengals game. It was a delight. But I got to tell you that I hope that people come out of this game thinking the Jaguars fixed their defense to a degree when in fact it was the weather, because the Jaguars defense is still very much a sell for me. And I want to give Jake Browning some flowers because he was awesome yesterday, but the tackling, the scheming, the Jaguars level of just overall performance was really, really bad yesterday on defense. And so, I think the Browns are the correct move. I think the Jaguars are potentially, if they drop this game and, chalk prevails with the Houston Texans game, we got ourselves a little fight in the AFC South, which is awesome. Not just because I bet a bad number with the Texans that is weak. I could get a better number right now is what I mean. But it would just make for kind of a dramatic finish in that division, which I think is very likely. I think the Jags are in trouble. I think if this dips back down to 2.5 for some reason, I would bet the Browns. If this moves to 3.5 with the Browns, I'm not going to be shocked because the matchup of CJ Beathard against this defensive line at full strength with a replacement tackle, not good at all. And if you've been watching much of the Jags offense this year, you know that they have really, really struggled in just design run concepts. Like, it has been a slog. And that's kind of one of the huge things you need to be able to keep the Browns defense honest. If they know that you're not going to be successful on the ground and they can pin their ears back and come after you, you are in deep, deep trouble. So Jaguars could get shut out this week, and it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. I just hope their defense does enough to, kind of keep the market from completely going ice cold on them. And then we could, play the Ravens next week.
Yeah, I think the Jags, the problem is that just both lines are just not very good at the moment outside of Josh Allen as an edge rusher, because they couldn't get any pressure on Jake Browning. Jake Browning's pressured on 27% of his dropbacks, and it's not like the Bengals have a great offensive line, so that's a mess. And then they weren't able to hold up on the back end. Rough game for Tyson Campbell in particular, and they're just dealing with a ton of injuries. I think as well that, like, we're going to see, if it is CJ Beathard, and I expect it will be, that Lawrence and his mobility, which has been compromised at times this year, but I think that covers up for a lot of sins on the offensive line. And if you've got, and the Jags, to your point, they cannot run the ball. They just can't run the ball behind this offensive line. And if you've got Myles Garrett, another week removed from whatever happened to his shoulder in Denver, and the other key thing is that Denzel Ward is going to be back, it looks like. And we've seen time and time again, when you have your number one corner, who is a legit number one corner, comes in, it just changes your entire defense. And now, look, it's probably not going to matter as much if there are 26-mile-per-hour winds, but just having him back there certainly helps. And so, I think a lot of things are pointing towards Cleveland in this game. The Browns, they just will not die. I think they win this game. They go to 8-5, and then the Jags, who I still think are going to win their division, so long as I would expect that Lawrence is going to miss a week and then probably be back in a couple of weeks. That's just guesswork based on the information around, but maybe he misses longer. But I suspect he's probably back for Sunday Night Football in 2 weeks against the Ravens. But if they lose this game, to your point about the division, then all of a sudden, like, the Texans play like me and you each week from here on out. They got 2 games against the Titans. They play the Jets and whoever's going to be quarterback for them. They have a very easy walk-in. They got to play. They got to play Joe Flacco, and they've got to play in the final week in the first ever Coach of the Year off, the Coy off. They play Shane Steichen and the Colts in Week 18. So it's not that difficult for them. So they're going to be right in the mix for the division if the Jags lose this, as we think they will. All right. Before we get to, I was going to say the big one. It's big-ish. Colts-Bengals. A lot of repercussions now in the AFC playoff picture. But, Drew, this Sunday night, it's a huge matchup between MVP candidates and Super Bowl contenders when Jalen Hurts and the Eagles travel to Dallas for a battle with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. This Eagles odyssey of blockbuster marquee matchups is almost at an end. And I just made Jalen Hurts in his MVP candidacy in the ground, preferably after this Sunday night. But Colts-Bengals. The Colts are 1-point favorites in Cincinnati. The total is 40.5. Now, mentioned the weather in Cleveland. This is kind of the storyline, I think, behind this week's games, just in a macro sense, encompassing a few games. So the following games all have 20-mile-per-hour winds and rain forecast. Rams at Ravens, Lions at Bears, Colts-Bengals, Houston at the Jets, and then Jags-Cleveland, as we mentioned. So this is one of the very weather-affected games. I would expect this total is probably going to trend down. And so I think there's a couple of things here. One, the look ahead on this was Colts -2.5. Now it's down to Colts -1 after Jake Browning touched God. So that's the first thing. Is that move big enough based on what Browning and the Bengals showed? And then secondly, and related, how real do you think that Jake Browning performance was?
I'm going to give it 90% real.
Okay.
10% an indication. Actually, I will say 80%. Actually, I'm going to give 10% more of an indication of the Jags defense failing, and 10% an indication of like they just had like as you were watching the game, it just had all of the vibes of like, man, the Bengals. I bet you everybody in the Bengals, if you asked them pregame, they all have been like, yeah, this was our best week of practice of the year. Like everybody knew exactly what they were supposed to do, where they were supposed to go. Zach Taylor. We rarely give Zach Taylor flowers because I just don't understand who he is. Really, I don't get his identity. He called that game so aggressively because this is our season. We lose here, it's over, and it worked very well. I thought even in the fourth down attempts that didn't get converted, like just the fact that he understood the stakes and he knew how big of a dog he was and what they needed to do to get the win. All of that was outstanding. And I think you can probably leave the wide receiver throwback plays on the cutting room floor. Those didn't really get me going so much. Didn't love them, but the straight up what you were asking Jake Browning to do and the concepts they utilized and the fact that they have a fully healthy wide receiver core and an emergence of a tight end and emergence actually of a wide receiver 4. Like they actually have a really good, healthy set of weapons in the passing game. That is making things easier for Joe Mixon to be effective. The offensive line is at full strength right now. Like I think that this offense for the Bengals is real. And I think Jake Browning, there is no tape of him on earth doing what he did last night. That was a surprise. But I don't think that is something that can't be repeated against weak competition this year, particularly at home and against a Colts team that defensively leaves you wanting a little bit. I think the Colts in general, we talked about already with some of our recap on Sunday, but Gardner Minshew is a turnover waiting to happen. He is now up against the Lou Anarumo defense that really tests you almost, even in the absence of the safeties and good linebacker play this year, they still test you as a quarterback, daring you to hold the ball and make the right decision and not make a mistake. This has all of the fingerprints of Gardner Minshew 3 or 4 turnover performance in my mind. And, I'm looking forward to, does Jermaine Pratt get 1 or 2 interceptions with Gardner Minshew kind of scrambling out of the pocket 3 seconds after the snap and just kind of, ducking something over the middle in this game. Like there are going to be a lot of opportunities, I think, for the Colts to stub their toe in this one. Jonathan Taylor still not expected to be back. The Colts offensive line has a great matchup, so I don't know that the defense for the Bengals is going to get lots of stops in this one outside of the turnovers. But I do think that factor could be ultimately the decider here. I played some Cincinnati money line on the open. I think that is still a fair play if you can get plus money there. I think this is going to flip before we get to the week's end as people all kind of digest that Jake Browning tape and come to the same conclusion that is mostly real. This is a guy that just didn't have many snaps at all. And honestly, the type of offense that the Bengals have had to fashion out of whole cloth to deal with the Burrow injury in the first half of the season now serves them very well to ask Jake Browning to do a lot of those same things with now a fully healthy set of wide receivers and offensive line. So the Bengals could be spoilers here. I don't think they ultimately get into the playoff mix at all. I think the losses that they've had in division take them entirely out of any type of hope of running down the Ravens in the North. But I think a lot of teams that saw the Bengals on their schedule after Burrow was done for the season and thought, oh, whew, well, that game, which we thought was going to be tough, now all of a sudden we can take a deep breath there. You better think twice, because this offense is still capable, I think, of getting, having relative success, as proven by last night.
Yeah. I have a lot of conflicting feelings and emotions about this game. We've thought about this game more than any other this season, which is really bizarre, because it shouldn't be that marquee of a matchup. I just find it fascinating from a lot of angles. And it all winds up to me thinking that I don't understand why the Bengals aren't favored like you. And I think this makes sense to me that, look, NFL lines are generally very solid and very liquid, but where if there is ever a point where they're going to be vulnerable, it's when there's a lack of information around the most important position, which is quarterback. And from what I saw of Jake Browning, I think there is a very good chance that he's just good after that game. And I think he had above a 90 PFF grade. He was 0.55 EPA per play. And I get that the Jags defense isn't great, and to your point, has benefited a lot from playing weak opposing offenses. But it's not like they were playing the Cardinals. Like, it's still a real defense, even if it's not an amazing one. And now they go up against a Colts team, which, unfortunately, as well, I've watched a lot of this year, and they're not very good. And Minshew's not very good. But there are a few interesting matchup angles with this. One is that, so the Colts have had, since Grover Stewart got suspended for PEDs, the past 6 weeks, the Colts have had basically the worst run defense in football. Like, Derrick Henry hasn't been able to get anything going on the ground this year until he played the Colts last week. They just don't have big bodies. Like, they don't have the personnel. Yeah. Grover Stewart is back this week, and it couldn't have come at a better time for Indianapolis, because there's 20-mile-per-hour winds. You'd expect that running the ball, there's going to be more of a premium on that. And so Stewart back, I think, is really key. And also the fact that, like, these Colts corners they're just not very good. Like, the outside of Kenny Moore, who's great in the slot, like these guys, like Darrell Taylor, Jalen Jones, like these guys, they weren't supposed to be the starters. Isaiah Rodgers was supposed to be their number one outside corner. He gets suspended for the season. They've lost other guys at corner too. And now I think the wind will nullify Chase and co a little bit. At the same time, Jake Browning just had a game where he put up, what did he put up? He put up 23 total EPA with an average depth of target of 4.5 yards. So I think that the way that they played is going to be a bit more immune to the conditions than if he had an average depth of target of, double-digit yards. So there's that as well. And the Bengals, their defense, which I think might be the worst in the league, honestly, the way that they've played, they're in the bottom 3. Like with Detroit recently, certainly as a pass defense, Cardinals, they're terrible, particularly against the pass, missing Cam Taylor-Britt. So that will get nullified a bit by the weather. But I think the key thing is whether the Colts can run the ball. And the Bengals have a terrible run defense as well. Braden Smith left the game for the Colts against the Titans, and that would be a huge miss if he is out, because he's quietly been one of the best tackles in football this year. So lots of competing things. But what I come back to is that I just can't get to a place, even with the one-day rest advantage, where the Colts are materially better than the Bengals on neutral. And this is saying that they are. And I think that the Bengals, I just don't think the market is treating Browning as real enough. Last thing, before I get your final thought, is that I think there is a chance that Browning, who, like I said, he was only pressured on 27% of his dropbacks against the Jags. Against the Ravens, it was 48%. Against the Steelers, it was 34%. And he was terrible under pressure in both of those games. So maybe it is just something where, he's very good at making the first. If he can go through his reads out without pressure, he's very solid and can get the job done. But he's going up against a Colts team that actually has a real pass rush now. I'm not really sure how it's happened, but the fact that, like, Samson Ebekam's been fantastic this year. DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye, they've got the 7th best pass rush in the league by PFF grade. And I think they will win that battle against the Bengals' suspect offensive line. And so Browning, if he's under pressure and conditions, maybe it could go south. But I think he showed enough on Monday night that the Bengals should be favored in this game.
Okay. All your points are fair. I will, I'm going to bump my spirited enthusiasm for backing Jake Browning down a notch. Cause I mean, it wasn't, obviously this is not my favorite look of the week. I just, I think the Bengals at full strength on offense could be a tough test. So,
I think so too.
if you can just get it into the hands of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins 5 yards down the field and let them do some nasty stuff, then you should be able to sustain drives. And who's the better kicker? Maybe the Bengals, I think. That could be the difference here in a windy game. So, it's a fun one. And I think, you're probably going to see this total take a little money to the under, I guess. So is there going to be a time to sell Colts? If you're thinking all about these Colts teams, right? And really like fundamentally the quarterback is super untrustworthy. Like yes. what's the right day and time to really hit the sell button hard on these guys?
But the problem is just their schedule. Like I'm saying this is like a problem. I really need the Colts to win these games because I'm heavily on Shane Steichen for Coach of the Year, and I believe he has the most deserving case. But after the Bengals, it's home Steelers. That's going to be Trubisky. Then it's at Falcons, home Raiders, home Texans. Like that is as easy as it can possibly get. So the thing with the Colts is that like they're bad, they're not very good, but at the same time, like they have enough pieces where if they have a really good coach, and they can be functional in all of these games. And the thing about Minshew that I like with the Colts is that Minshew's issue isn't like Tim Boyle or Trevor Siemian where he just can't make the throws. Like Minshew can kind of make all the throws. Like his dime to Alec Pierce down the left sideline in the OT, like that's a perfect throw. Like he can make all the throws. It's just that he's so high variance and he just doesn't like he's just, to your point, he's a turnover machine. But sometimes the turnovers just don't come or people drop them. Play to play, like his median plays are pretty good. Like he can make all this, like his game against Dallas for Philadelphia last year, to me, that was the quintessential Minshew game where he went through stretches against the Dallas defense where it's like, this guy can do no wrong. And then he just has two inexplicable turnovers and they lose the game. And so that's what Minshew is. But he gives this team enough variance game to game where they're going to be in all of these games, you would suspect. And there's this idea that Minshew's just gonna have a game where he just shoots them out of it basically. But they're so well schemed. They have a really good offensive line. Michael Pittman is an elite wide receiver. Josh Downs is really good. Alec Pierce was awesome on the weekend. And if he is a real thing too, Zach Moss is really good. I don't really understand why, but he's really good. They have enough pieces that they can sustain being an average offense, I think. And if they get, it's so weird to say it, but if they get Juju Brents back as a corner who's actually competent, and they've got Grover Stewart coming back, like I think the defense can be vaguely okay enough. And again, I think they maximize everything that they do. They're just so well coached. Steichen with his play design, with his aggressiveness on fourth down, which is what you have to do. You have to overcompensate with aggressiveness when you don't have a talent advantage. And then defensively with Gus Bradley, who's been kind of maligned, I guess, of late, but like they know what they have. They only rush four. They don't send blitzes because these corners can't hold up in one-on-one man coverage. So I think they're just a really clever team that's maximizing the most out of their roster. And all these games are going to be ugly, and they're probably going to go 3-2 and 10-7 and somehow make the playoffs. And I will certainly be beating the drum for Steichen.
Yeah, I think playoffs is definitely in the mix. I agree. They're on a 4-game win streak against 4 bad quarterbacks. Yep. And that's worth keeping in mind. And I guess
but they've got 4 more bad quarterbacks.
They got 4 more bad quarterbacks.
Browning is a bad quarterback.
If Browning's bad, yeah, 4 more. And so it's very likely that they're going to get to double-digit wins. I agree with all your points. Are you going to have the stomach to take 2.5 points with a money line week 18 hosting the Texans?
Yeah, that's going to be a big old high leverage game. Let's see what the Texans look like without Tank Dell, again banged up on the offensive line. Like I think that, I mean, Stroud is just so good and so much better than Gardner Minshew. But I do think 2.5. I do think that is probably the line in week 18. The game in Indy definitely helps. Will make it a bit more of a contest, but that's going to be more or less a coin flip. I think. I think that decides Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I'm pretty worried about the Texans this week, by the way.
Okay. Why are you worried about the weather?
The weather, the injuries, the defense they're up against.
Yeah, it's funny because like Zach Wilson comes off looking so much better after what Boyle and Simeon served up. Like Zach Wilson's a bad quarterback, But I also think he is a real life quarterback in that he can do some stuff and he can move around and throw the ball downfield. And I agree. If Wilson is the quarterback, I'd be taking Jets plus 6.5 in that spot. The look ahead was like 3.5 or something, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah, that's too big of a move. I'm with you there.
6 points is big.
It is a bit big, particularly in the weather. All right. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those of you watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also, a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick and Juju Brents, we'll see you soon.